Hey guys, this is Dr. G, Dr. Sabrice Guerrier, and welcome to Biology 1000 or Introductory Cell Biology. The truth is that it's not unheard of for me to do online lectures, but this is the first time I'm doing one for the first lecture of the term. And so I'm sorry that we can't be together this week so I can meet you guys, but I look forward to meeting you guys next week when we are all back to school. So, just what I wanted to do today was give you guys a sort of brief introduction to what we're doing in the class. And this is not going to be a super long PowerPoint. And in fact, when I do these kinds of online lectures, I won't be talking for 30 or 40 minutes. These are going to be 10 to 15-minute lectures that'll try to succinctly give you the concepts that you need to know. And so this lecture is going to be the same for both sections. I'm teaching two sections of Intro to Cell this term. Section 1 meets at 8, and Section 2, I believe, meets at 11:35, okay? And we'll be meeting at Olin 222, okay? My office is Olin 221. You guys can find my email online, and my office hours are going to be on Tuesday from 9 to 10 a.m., and on Wednesdays from 2 to 3 p.m. I will also be happy to meet with people by appointment. The truth is I've been at Millsaps for 5 years. I don't know that anybody's ever come during my office hours. And the truth is I never remember where my office hours are because people come by all the time. And so one of the things I want to encourage y'all to do is to come by my office to ask any question. What I would say is that the learning environment isn't just the classroom, it's also my office. And when you're in my office, there's things that I can explain that are specific to something you don't understand. And there's also a time where I can think a little more clearly, so I'm actually better in my office. Okay? So, what are the things that I want you guys to do before we even start the class? Is normally if we were in class, I would ask you to fill this out on a index card in the class, but I want to get to know you guys. And one of the biggest things to get to know you is to first get to know your name, okay? And so what I want y'all to do is get a piece of paper, and on that piece of paper, I want you to write your name and a name you prefer to be called, like a nickname, okay? Your preferred pronoun, your hometown, your major or what you think your major is going to be. I'd like you to let me know if you've taken chemistry, either here in Millsaps or somewhere else. And that could also be AP chemistry in high school, okay? I'd like you to talk about why you're taking this class. What often happens is people say, I'm taking it because it's part of my major. And one of the things I'd like to start doing is ask another question about what did you get at the class at the end? What did you get out of the class at the end of the class? Just to see if the value of the class has gone beyond the fact that it's part of your major. The other thing I'd like you to do is tell me what your favorite food is, okay? And what's your favorite movie, okay? So what I'd like y'all to do is write this on a piece of paper and bring it to class on Wednesday, January the 17th. That'll be the first time we meet in person as a class. But I'll be around, before that time, okay? Okay. So here are the answers, my answers to those questions. So this is how people get to know me. My name, Dr. Guerrier. Virtually everyone calls me Dr. G. Okay. My preferred pronouns are he or him. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. I was a biology major in college. I think number 5 is did I take chemistry? The answer is yes. I don't remember number 6, so I'm going to go back. Number 6 was, why am I taking this class? I'm not taking it, I'm teaching it. Haha. Okay. My favorite dish is a Haitian dish. My favorite food is a Haitian dish. My family's from Haiti. My favorite dish is a fried pork dish called guyo. I love it. Whenever I go home to New York, it's the first thing I do is go to eat it. My favorite movie, I can't ever pick. I kept this slide from last term, but the truth is, if I did it again this term, it would probably be a different set of movies. But Shawshank Redemption, I love. Godfather Part 2, the Dark Knight trilogy. So I'd love to hear what your favorite movies are, along with the answers to the answers to these other questions. Okay. All right. So this is the first lecture. And it says part 1, because normally there's a part 1 and a part 2 of this. And I may do the part 2 of this tomorrow. I'm deciding, because usually the part 2 is how do you be successful in the course. And that may be something I give you guys in person. I haven't decided yet, so we'll see. But the normal parts of this lecture are usually, why should we learn cell biology? How will learn cell biology? How will your learning be evaluated? And how can you be successful in this course? And what I'll do real quick is address 2, 3, and 4, because most of the entire lecture is going to be about 1. So I'll give you some quick bullet points on 2, 3, and 4. How will learn cell biology gets at the techniques we're going to use, right? Of course, there's going to be lecture. In those lectures, I'm going to ask you tons and tons of questions. So a lot of how I think folks learn is by questioning and having those questions answered, okay? And usually what I mean by answering those questions is you ask me a question, and then I ask you a question in return to try and get you to the answer, okay? The other thing we're going to be doing is a variety of active learning techniques. That means not just sitting in lecture, but doing something that helps you learn the material, okay? There's lots of different techniques, so I'm not going to talk about them now. So how will your learning be evaluated? Well, there's formal evaluations. Those are going to be exams, okay? There's less formal evaluations like homework assignments. And there's even less formal evaluations like me walking around, talking to you individually, trying to find out what you know, what you understand, what you don't understand. In all those cases, the most important thing to me as your teacher is, are you understanding the material? So there are going to be times where you get a grade, your grade could be super, and I gave a bunch of extra credit, and you're going to find that I'm still trying to find out, well, what's your confusion about this other thing? Because the grade matters less to me than your understanding, because the understanding is what's going to get you through in the long term. Okay? How can you be successful in this course? The way you're successful in this course is, number 1, to be absolutely curious. Always ask why. And then step 2 is to go find the answer. And going to find the answer means searching your textbook, searching the internet, searching outside sources, and then coming to me to try and put it all together. Okay? I'm going to help you do that by giving you a bunch of homework. I'm going to help you to do that by asking you tons of questions. Okay? All right? The other way you're successful in this course is by staying on top of the material. Reading ahead, reading the textbook ahead helps in the class. Even though I don't necessarily go by the textbook, there are sections in the textbook that will help you in terms of background for the course. Working with your colleagues in the classroom. So finding someone who can challenge you to think outside the box, that helps you be successful in this course. The other thing that helps you to be successful in the course, and this goes in any science course, is if you think you understand something, right? Draw it out and then try to explain it to someone, both someone that doesn't know it well and also someone that you think knows the material better than you do. And you can survey your whole class for that kind of person. And then if you can't find them in your class, and even if you can find them in the class, you come to me in the end and find out if you really know it. Okay? All right. But the thing I really want to focus on today is why should we learn cell biology? Okay. The question of why should we learn cell biology, I've taken different approaches different year. I use viruses sometimes, I use cancer sometimes. But this year I've been really motivated by one thing, which is exercise. So when we think about exercise, all of us think about exercise. There are the people in the class that are exercising like crazy. There are people in the class, or there are people in the class that really want to exercise. Most of us know somebody who's exercising, want to get in the gym ourselves. It's the spring term, so a lot of people's New Year's resolution, right, is to go out there and exercise. And even if you don't exercise, you know that we know that exercise is inherently beneficial, okay? And here are 20 exercise benefits. And the truth is, I took this from a very non-scientific source, okay? And we'll talk a little bit about scientific and non-scientific sources later. But the point is that we know that there's tons of benefits associated with exercise. And probably the benefit people associate most with exercise is this reduction in body fat, okay? So the idea that when folks exercise, you reduce body fat, right? Your weight goes down, you feel better, okay? So what does cell biology have to do with reducing body fat, okay? That's one of the things we're going to get at this semester, okay? So here's an example, right? So we're gonna stretch this out just for a minute. So remember, we want to know, so what does cell biology have to do with reducing body fat? So here are two elite athletes. One guy's a power lifter, and the other guy's a cyclist. Y'all might recognize the cyclist. That's Lance Armstrong, okay? So these guys both exercise regularly and in their own rights are in really great shape. Right now, shape doesn't mean anything to us, right? But they're both elite athletes. So my question to you is, which of these two athletes is leaner, i.e., is likely to have a lower body fat percentage, and is more aerobically fit? I'm going to give you guys about a minute to think about that without me talking. Okay, that was slightly less than a minute. But a minute of silence when you're doing a recording is really long, actually. It's different than looking at you all in the classroom. So I think we would all guess, right, that the leaner person is Lance Armstrong, okay? But what does it mean that he's more aerobically fit, okay? So when we think about aerobic fitness, there's a measure called the VO2 max. So what you're looking at is a picture here of Lance Armstrong hooked up to this machine where he's breathing in oxygen, okay? And if the breathing there got muffled, it's because I'm a very animated person, and so while I said breathing, I put my hand up against my mouth, okay? So Lance Armstrong, okay, is really aerobically fit. And the measure of that, one measure of that, is something called a VO2 max, which is one's ability to take in and subsequently use oxygen, okay? So here are two charts, okay, of a range of VO2 maxes for women and also a range of VO2 maxes for men. And you can see that the ability to take in and use oxygen, or this measure of aerobic fitness, goes down as people age, which is consistent with a lot of what we think, Okay, and you're also seeing the difference between people who are not very aerobically fit, so people at the very poor level, the red sections on these graphs, and people who are really aerobically fit, the people in the purple sections on these tables. Okay, and so one of the things that's interesting is that Lance Armstrong didn't even fit on this chart. Okay, Lance Armstrong's VO2 max at 22 years old, so that being the first column on this table, okay, on the bottom men's table, okay, at 22 years old, Armstrong's VO2 max was 81.2. That's significantly higher than that the superior level on the men's chart there. So what does that mean? What does that VO2 max have to do with aerobic fitness, right? So it means that Lance Armstrong can take in a massive amount of oxygen, and his cells are really good at using it. And I know I just said the word cells. Let me just define it in the smallest terms now, no pun intended. That is to say that living things like us are made up of smaller living things called cells, and cells are the smallest unit of life, okay? They're the smallest living thing. A single cell is the smallest living thing. It turns out our cells are doing everything, okay? And Lance Armstrong's cells are really good at taking up oxygen and using it, okay? And so what does this have to do with this idea that when you exercise, right, you have a reduced level of fat, right? You reduce body fat. Well, the reason is because oxygen is the thing that we use to break down the nutrients that we take in, okay? So here's a metabolic summary. So metabolism, right, is the breaking down and building up of stuff, okay? And what you can see is in green you have carbohydrates, in yellow you have fats, in blue you have proteins. These are the things we take in our food. And what you notice is at the very bottom of this metabolic summary is oxygen. And so it turns out that oxygen, and a lot of you guys know this from high school biology, oxygen, right, is the thing that allows us to break down much of the nutrients we take in. Okay, so you need oxygen to break down carbohydrates, which are your sugars, okay? And you need oxygen to break down your fats, and you ultimately need oxygen to break down proteins, although I'm going to tell you now that we mostly use carbohydrates and fats for our nutrients, okay? So if we go back to the question of, so why is Lance Armstrong leaner than the power lifter? The reason he's leaner, the reason he has a lower body fat composition is because his increased uptake of oxygen, right? And his cells are more efficient at using it, means he breaks down more of the material he takes in, which is going to allow him to be leaner, okay? So a real quick side note, one of the things we're going to do in this course is try to understand how oxygen leads to the breakdown of these nutrients, okay? All right. So the other thing I want to stress is that that previous slide, I'm going to go back just to make a point here. That previous slide says that Lance Armstrong takes in a bunch of oxygen, his cells are really efficient at using it, but you're seeing oxygen at the end of all these metabolic pathways. That is to say that oxygen is breaking down proteins, carbohydrates, fats. So that kind of means that if you're in shape, you'll just be smaller than somebody who isn't, right? And that's sort of true. But that's not what this very unscientific slide says. It says reduces body fat. And maybe what that's saying is that, well, you'd reduce other stuff too, but the only thing you care about is reduced body fat. Or it's saying something like exercising preferentially reduces body fat. In other words, if you exercise, you burn more fat than you do other stuff. I hope everyone's with me on that. So it turns out that folks that are aerobically fit, folks that exercise, actually burn a bigger percentage of fat as their nutrients, okay, than they do carbohydrates. Okay, so that what that means is that if you're exercising and you need to get energy, your body has a choice. It could break down fats, it could break down carbohydrates, right? These are the things it has at its disposal. If someone's aerobically fit, they tend to use fat as the substrate, as the nutrient that they want to break down to get the energy. Whereas someone that is obese or is not aerobically fit doesn't use fat. And so you can see already that this means that if you're not aerobically fit, all right, so if you're really overweight, if one is really overweight, then this problem gets compounded by the fact that you're less efficient at burning fat than somebody that is in shape. Okay? So it turns out that, so what we're really saying is that exercise makes you metabolically flexible, right? So it's not just that exercise reduces fat content because you work out more, so you burn more nutrients, right, for energy. It's that when you work out, you get better at burning fat, right? Better at burning the nutrient you want to get rid of, okay? So it turned out that for a long time, people knew this happened, but people didn't really know what the metabolic switch was, okay? And so one thing I want you to think about before I talk a little bit about this switch is that, think about this. If you're looking at this picture, you're seeing on the left, you're seeing somebody who's lean and aerobically fit, and they can burn fat. You're seeing someone on the right who's obese and not aerobically fit and doesn't burn fat. And what we're saying is that exercise facilitates a switch, right? So that when you exercise, you get better at burning fat. Somehow your cells choose to burn fat for energy. So what if you could figure out how cells burn fat, right? That switch, and just target that switch, right? For the obese person, it's really hard to work out, right? You get on the treadmill, your knees hurt. I know it. I'm a little overweight, so sometimes my knees hurt when I work out. But what if I could lose weight and then start working out? In other words, what if I could stimulate that switch, okay, so that my body could burn fat without me exercising, and then I could start exercising. This could transform exercise for people that really need it, okay? And so this is the subject of something that I really want to talk about in the class, okay? So it turns out there was a really nice article written in the New Yorker magazine that got at this problem of stimulating exercise, okay? And essentially what it talks about is a bunch of recent scientific studies that have figured out different ways to trigger some of the benefits of exercise at the molecular level. What that means is that we know exercise is running on the treadmill, but what's happening inside an individual cell when we run on the treadmill? There's been a ton of research that has gotten at that problem, and now we know single molecules, right? Single things inside the cell that change, and people are trying to develop drugs that stimulate that change without the exercise. And so this article is about the idea of developing this exercise pill, okay? The point I want to make here is that in order to understand this exercise pill, we have to understand all these basics about cell biology that we're going to talk about this term. So with the idea that we're trying to understand the exercise, with the idea that we're trying to understand the exercise pill, we're going to talk about basic cell biology, and we're going to continue to reference how this could be affected by exercise. That's one, okay? So every lecture is going to be focused on some aspect of how we extract energy from carbohydrates and fats, okay? And then we're going to keep pointing back to how this relates to the exercise pill, okay? And in lab, we're going to explore that new thing that uncovered the mechanism for the switch. So remember I told you, that switch, that idea that you work out and you burn more fat than you burn sugar, right? People have known that for years, But why a person that exercises burns more fat than they burn sugar? Or excuse me, why the person who exercises burns a larger percentage of fat than a person that doesn't exercise? Okay. We've known that for years, but the mechanism for that, why on the cellular level that happens, we do not know until very recently. Okay, so one of the things we're going to do is in the lab, we're going to explore the mechanism for the switch I talked about. Okay? And so we're going to spend basically the first half of the term reading this paper and using this paper to, one, understand how science is done, to, two, understand how science is communicated in written form, and three, to hone our analytical skills and understand data. Okay? And what's most important about this, in order to understand the data in this paper, we have to talk about the basic cell biology from the lecture. So the lecture and the lab this year in this course are intimately connected. The material we learn in the lecture is going to allow us to understand this paper in the lab, and understanding this paper in the lab is going to help us understand the molecular underpinnings of exercise. Okay? So here's our approach to understanding cell biology this term. This is the whole class schedule for the term. Okay? And I'm not going to go through everything here, but what you're going to notice is that at the beginning of each week, there's a topic. And what we've done is we've taken the idea that we want to understand how exercise is working at the molecular level into 5 little questions. Okay, 5 or 6 little questions. The first question is basically, what are the nutrients we use for energy and how do we get that energy? Okay. The second question is, how do those nutrients enter the cell? How does the fat and carbohydrates enter the cell? The third question is, what is the formal mechanism for extracting that energy? Okay. That is to say, like what specific metabolic pathways, right? What specific metabolic processes does the cell use to get the energy? And you already know the answer to that. That's cellular respiration. Okay? And then once you exercise, like how do you change the cell? How does the cell change so that it's better at breaking down fat than somebody's cells who doesn't exercise? Okay? And then the last thing we'll sort of play with, and there's no title here, is I'm going to tell you about a drug that stimulates the thing that regulates the switch. But that drug does some weird stuff that goes outside of exercise. And it turns out those things that go outside of exercise are really important to genetics. Okay? And so we're going to talk about that at the end of the class. Okay? All right. At the same time, as we're doing that in a lecture, we're going to be going through real scientific experiments in the lab. This paper that talks about the switch, that talks about how or why the switch occurs. Okay? Why this switch from basically using fats and sugars equally, so to speak, if you don't work out, but when you really, really work out and get into shape, being better at using the fats. Okay? We're going to play with that in the lab. I'm going to give you assignments that are going to help you to learn how to read papers. I'm going to give you assignments to help you learn what the sections in the papers mean. I'm going to give you assignments to help you learn how to analyze data. And I'm going to give you assignments to help you learn how to write a paper. We're then going to do an experiment. You guys will design an experiment based on things we have around campus to look at some sort of cellular respiration process. And then it's going to be your job to write a scientific paper on that. Okay? All right? All right. So that's the big overview of the course. What I hope you guys see is how the lab and lecture are related. And what I want to end on is one last thing. So there's 2 assignments that I'd like you all to do before we start next week. The first assignment is the thing you need to do on basically giving me your name, answering those questions on slide 2 in this presentation. The second thing is I want you to read that New Yorker article, the New Yorker article on the exercise pill. I'm going to send you the article along with some questions you need to answer. Okay? Now, typically, I didn't say this before, but typically, we're going to work as groups in the lab. And even on this particular assignment, you guys were going to work on as groups. Because of the switch to our schedule, we're not going to have time to do that, so I'm going to ask you to work on it individually. I'm not concerned about whether you get it right. What I wanted to do is to help you get through the article, which is, like I said, just a regular magazine article, but help you to start thinking about how exercise and the cell are related, okay? So in this talk, I'm getting super pumped up. For the sophomores, y'all already know. The freshmen may not have heard some. I know I said I was going to be 15 minutes, but I got all pumped up and I got a little crazy, so I went over a little bit. I'm sorry, not a little bit, almost double time. I misjudged how long it will take. I promise you these videos will get a little bit shorter, okay? Anyway, I'm super excited to see you guys, and I'm super excited to try this new sort of exercise-driven approach to the class. So I look forward to seeing you guys, and look for subsequent videos coming this week on some of the lectures that we need to do. Okay, guys, take care. Bye-bye.